Hello, my name is Peter Douglas and I'm the CEO and Managing Director for iPath. Welcome to our webinar, Electrification, Why Old Habits Die Hard. We all know we should be contributing to a greener world. Pressure to do so is growing exponentially in our macro environment, from legislators, regulators, and all the other stakeholders turning up the volume in a changing political arena. Most of us are mindful of adhering to our company's environmental policies and taking corporate responsibility to support a cleaner planet and a more sustainable future. One step in this direction is sure to choose electric machines over diesel-fueled models. So why aren't more companies selecting to do this? At an individual level, we may listen to our consciences, but do we actually only hear the voice of the bottom line of today's budget sheet? This webinar will investigate the obstacles that prevent progress, from issues with infrastructure, a resistance culture, and perceived cost and awareness of machine capability, and importantly, how we might approach overcoming these blockers and find where the opportunity lies. Guest speakers from different industry perspectives will take the pulse of the fleet electrification culture, looking at data from different countries and examining how barriers can overcome, and how will embracing electrification pave the way for other technologies in the future, such as hydrogen-powered machines. This industry has come a long way over the last few years, and we are seeing through our annual worldwide rental reports increases in electric and hybrid machines in fleets around the world. But is this moving fast enough? Rental companies are advertising themselves as having green fleets and making big environmental commitments, which is good. Manufacturers are making huge progress in this area, with more electric models coming into the market all of the time. Halot pledged back in 2018 that all new models going forward will be electric or hybrid. New electric conversion kits are being developed to convert existing diesel machines to electric. And one manufacturer in particular has made the decision in Europe to only sell its range of electric machines, although it chooses to sell diesel-powered machines in other territories. I'm delighted that today we have representatives of two of the world's leading manufacturers and one of Europe's largest rental companies to discuss this subject. And we will hear their perspectives on electrification. We will first hear from Jaco de Kleiver, VP of Sales and Marketing for Terex Aerial Work Platforms. Then we will hear from Remy Heidelberger, Group Product Manager for Halot Group. And finally, we will get the rental perspective. We will hear from Philippe Witter, Group Fleet Manager from Rewal. At the end, time permitting, there will be a period of time for questions. So if you do have any questions, please type them into the Q&A panel on your computers, and we'll try and get to as many as we can at the end. We've already had some as a result of the registration process, so we'll go through those questions with our panelists. I also want to thank our sponsors for today's event, and they are Versalift, EMA Group, Skyjack, and Hinowa. Thank you very much for your support, guys. It really means a lot to us. Finally, before I hand over to our first sponsors video, I just want to inform you that for today's webinar, we've had over 470 registrations from an amazing 49 countries around the globe. That's why we continue to produce these webinars, because you guys obviously want to see them. So let me now please hand over to our first sponsors video. This is Hinowa's factory tour. Thank you. Many thanks to Hinoa for that video, and congratulations to Hinoa on your 35th anniversary in business. I saw that on social media yesterday, so congratulations. Right, time for our first speaker on the subject of electrification. Now I'd like to hand over to Jaco de Kleiver, VP Sales and Marketing for Terex Aerial Work Platforms. Over to you, Jaco.
Thank you, Peter, and good afternoon, everybody. I will share my screen. So, why old habits die hard, as Peter said, the theme of this webinar today. Throughout the years, we've seen that trying to come up with alternative sources of power in machinery that we provide and that we sell, that our industry is representing, has been a complete challenge. Therefore, I think it's fair to say that our industry does not like electricity. First, and that's quite a bold statement, of course, because we have a lot of electric powered equipment already in our fleets. We're selling a lot of electric equipment, all manufacturers together, but still we do not like it as a complete source of power into the fleet. We also see obviously that electricity is a hazard in terms of safety. Working underneath power lines is giving extra caution, but all around electricity as such is not one of the preferred power sources. But I think that's a yet. And it has to be a yet because, as rightly stated before, environmental pressure will lead to more electrification and electrified machines in the fleet. If we take a little trip down to memory lane, 1966, the company I work for, Genie, was founded in Seattle, and we started producing a manually powered small lift to bring duct pipes up to a height to have the air conditioning installers a more safe environment to work in. It was manually winched, and we made it an electric unit afterwards, but that never worked because there was no power on site. It was very difficult. The cables were trailing over the floor, and it didn't make us any flexible. The manpower was always available, the socket wasn't. So if you look at the numbers that we sold at that stage, it was 90%, it was still manually powered, 10% was just electric. We then take a little step forward in time, 1972, it was just a small step for us to put a basket on one of the aluminium masts that we built. But look what the guy's doing. He's winching himself up. We also made an electric version available, but as this was not a self-propelled unit yet, the guy had to come down, unplug, move out. So everything was manual, and again, not always sockets available. And then early 80s, finally, there is something that looks like a scissor, fixed on a boom arm, a bigger platform, and it could work. It was a small step, but it was a huge step forward. And let's call this electrification 1.0 because we had 21 minutes runtime on the battery, and that was it. And then it needed to charge for 6 hours. But we could work indoors, we could self-propel the machine, so it was a huge step forward. And if we then look how we can educate and how it was educated, it was quite complex because we moved on to the next phase. Early 80s, we started with IC powered booms. So diesel engines came into play, obviously not driven by any emission regulations yet, but also we had the first DC powered boom, means we can work indoors because the challenge obviously with the stick booms with an electrified or with an internal combustion engine, they could not work indoors. So therefore, we also had an electric version, and that worked very well. But there was no synergy between the two. The one had issues with the emissions and the fume coming out of the engine exhaust. On the other side, we had the electric machine. Battery technology at that stage was not that advanced, so we had very short cycle times, and then you had to charge for 6-7 hours. So luckily, the industry came up with the ultimate solution: high energy. That was the best of both worlds, we thought. And we all jumped on board. Nifty, JLG, ourselves, Hollot, Snorkel, Manitou, we all came with a bi-energy solution. But was it really the new standard? Unfortunately, it wasn't. Limited functionality, because we only could get the onboard generator to charge the batteries, where there was little or no functionality on that engine. So it was basically taking a charger with us on board and avoiding to having a socket or a power cable going into a socket to charge the batteries. But if we had to, overnight, it took quite long, and therefore cycle times on the work were quite short. And even though the concept was very simple, it was complicated at the same time. It was new, and people didn't get their heads around it. And if we then look at the trajectory that was followed by all manufacturers, there is little.
I'm sorry, guys. I think we seem to have lost Jaco when he was in full flow there. We'll give him a minute or so to return. Okay, well, we're waiting for Jaco to rejoin us. Sorry, he's got a bit of an unstable connection in a hotel room. We'll introduce our next sponsor short video. This is a short video from Versalift. Many thanks to Versalift for your very valued sponsorship. Thank you once again. We still don't seem to have Jaco back, so I think we will play our last sponsors video if we can. This is from Skyjack. Thank you. Thank you very much to Skyjack for their sponsorship and for that video. We still don't have Jaco back. It was interesting to see where that presentation was going, and we will try and get him back before the end of the webinar to finish off his presentation. But we're going to move on now. The show must go on. We're going to move on now. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Remy Heidelberger, who is the Group Product Marketing Manager for Hulot Group. Over to you, Remy.
Thank you, Peter. Let me share my screen. Hello, everyone. Just tell me if it is okay on your side. Okay. So, Peter, as you said, in 2018, thanks to Intermative and Tolot announced his big shift into the electrification of the machine. So I will try to share our experience we have from this time to today, because market is evolving very fast today, probably too much faster on even on personal event, not only on professional. Everything is moving fast, but it's not easy to change. It's never easy. So I will try to share our experience today. Shift to electrification, and especially electrifying WAF terrain mobile elevating platform, is definitely a significant change to all valuable actors in our ecosystem. We all know that change is a long process. As said, it's not easy. I will try to underline in this presentation what are the potential blocking points today, and what are the opportunities we have in front of us. There are a lot of opportunities. From product development perspective, it's always good to understand customer pains to develop the ideal machine or services or solution, whatever it is. From internal combustion engine to electric machine architecture, the success of this transition will be there if we unlock following key points. Let's split it in three pillars. The first is the mindsets. As Jaco said, the change is hard, and people mindset is really important to educate people, to train people, to inform people about the technology. Make sure they have understood and make sure that fits to them. So, for example, machine autonomy today is a big question mark on the market, linked to also the performances of the machine. Machine use at work also, the change of architecture might be depending the type of the machine, with a new IHM, with a new way of working. So, and I will go a bit deeper on that. IHM is very important to make sure that people use the machine as before in the easiest way, as best as we can. Maintenance also and repair. There are some question marks on the field today related to our partners and also the user. How do I maintain the machine compared to a diesel or gas one? Are there some difference? Do I need training and so on and so on? So mindsets is very important to change the habits. Then the second pillar is the technological enablers. Just bear in mind that today almost 70% of the market, they are already electric machine. So we do have the technologies, but sometimes somewhere to transfer those technologies on bigger machine, we need added value solution technology, and sometimes somewhere the maturity in terms of price and cost also is not there today. It will be so progressive here, but it's potentially an issue to accelerate the development of the machine, of the electric machine today. And I will also go deep a bit later on that point. A very big key point is also the purely like in B2C and in B2C in EV car. Do we have the efficient and do we have enough charging infrastructure? That's also a big question today from our partners and our user. And then legislation. It's the key also to make sure that the switch of the type of energy and machine is ready. Governments, we see some big push from the cities. We talk about zero or low emission zone. So here clearly more we will have homogeneous intention from the government and also from the cities, from also the customers, from contractors. There it will be easy to transfer to this type of electrical machine. But let's go a bit deeply into the subject, looking to the whole discussion we have with our customer, with our machine user on the field. Here are the main open questions they do have regarding RAF Terrain electric platform. First, let's talk about the rental depot. Machine is a certain time at the rental depot. So it's as said just a bit before, it's the matter is to make sure that the rental depots do have the right electrical infrastructure to make sure that they can plug all the machine tomorrow. If, for example, the market shifts 100%, are they structurized to plug all the machine and charge the machine before they go to the workshop? Also, the question, as said a bit before, regarding the maintenance, it's a small shift, but all our partners are going already and will go in the training. It's also like in Holot, we have to shift the competencies of the people from internal combustion engine to electric architecture. So this is a bit new on the market, and it could be today it's a part of potentially the blocking points. Then machine install again before the going to the job site. Machine they are stored potentially depending the machine, depending the economical context of the moment. Machine they are stored for a long time. So there are some questions related to the customer regarding the battery management. What is the best way of maintaining a battery to make sure the TCO is not affected? So here I will go a little bit deeper regarding the solution we propose today to unlock this type of question and to make sure that there is no change from the use of a diesel machine. And then also a point is extreme weather condition. Here also we have worked a lot and we are still working to make sure that the machine can work in many conditions. Then finally, probably the most important part, when the machine is doing its job on the field, we just need to make sure that when we develop a product that people know how to use it, that there is no change compared to before. Here it's very important because we have many questions. It's exactly like in B2C in car industry. Are there change using an electric machine compared to diesel one? It must have no change. The role of those machines, our aims is to produce machine to do work at aids. This is important. So here we know we have sometimes somewhere a question from user. The target is to make sure that there is no difference when they use the machine. Range anxiety, it's a melt of what I have said just before. There is clearly in our business big question regarding the autonomy of the machine. So here clearly when we develop a product, again, we need to make sure that there is no question from the customer side, that the customer, the user is in total confidence by using such a machine. So clearly here, when we size the machine, we look deeply at that. It's totally linked to the machine performances. And here again, the target of the success of electrifying machine and having adoption from the market is to make sure that there are the same performances compared to diesel machine or even better, depending what we need. Based on the fact that already many machines in our business, 70% of the machine are electric ones, we can comfortably say that there are available solutions to make the change happen. So I said in 2018, we announced a new strategy through the Pulseo brand, which is an umbrella brand that cover the shift on all RAV terrain diesel machine to electric machine. Today we are in 2022, and clearly we see that now the trend is pushing very hard. Also a bit thanks that to the other ecosystems, like again in the car industry, in B2C environment, it's helping to make the change. The legislation is definitely the first key. Why changing something which is working today? So I'm talking about diesel machine. If we put ourselves in the place of the user, why changing something which is working good? But here definitely environmental mindsets of all valuable chain from the rental to contractor should help. We see more and more low emission zone or zero emission zone. We know that Olympic Games are arriving in France as example, and we know here there will be definitely needs to have, let's say, green workshop in order to reduce the environmental footprints of all those construction, as example. There is also the noise. We don't talk a lot about that, but when we met customer, clearly, when we discuss with partner, noise reduction, not only pollutant emission, but noise emission is a key here as an added value. No noise is always better early in the morning in the downtown of the city. It's always better than having many diesel machines working around in the city. So here it's a very key, and we all know that a directive to reduce noise of the machine is arriving also in parallel of directive like stage 5, like GB4 in China very soon. So this should help to transfer all the diesel machine to electric or hybrid platform. So today, more and more restrictions are done. I talk about stage 5 and GB4 in China very soon, making them more and more ecological. I'm talking about the engine, but complex and added cost here. So clearly here, it's an impact on the TCO on the machine. And based on the experience here, that 70%, I said, around of the new markets, of the machines sold worldwide speaking, they are already electric. So we all do have an experience in that. So architecture is existing. As said in the beginning, technology enabler will also permit, like lithium-ion, probably very soon, to also increase autonomy, increase performances, and so on. But right now, we already have the solution. So we have introduced in 2018 in Intermat our Pulseo strategy machine, so adding new feature and new benefits, included RAV terrain capabilities. So here, we talk about zero emission also, and silence at work. As said, the emission is not only the key. Clearly, the big benefit on the market is the science at work. Very important today, also for the safety, not only for the comfort, also for the safety. The Pulseo range, it is also a matter of full versatile machine. This is also important. What we want to underline is we are, yesterday we were capable to work mainly out in out condition, and today we are capable to open new application, having those, let's say, big RT RAV terrain machine entering in some site when it's needed to make some jobs. So clearly here it's also a new gain of productivity for all the valuable chain, starting from the user to also the rental company. That makes one machine for two applications. Last point, which makes change happen, that's all HMI devices. So as you probably saw on our machine and also on other machines on the market, not only on the Nuke market, there is more and more screen. So having new machine architecture must not impact the productivity on the fields. Here, we still want to improve machine user understanding by adding machine IHM, screen on the machine, and also having a diagnostic tool. Like here on this presentation, you can easily see that the worker is using a diagnostic tool close to the machine, and also thanks to telematic solution that arriving very fast on the market from now 2 years, we have developed very specific KPI to better monitorize the battery management system. So here, clearly, we can make maintenance recommendation. We can raise, when it's needed, battery indicators, battery alert also. And we have developed also a battery care module to monitor better the maintenance and also the daily best practices on the machine. So this concerns not only the partners, the rental, but this concerns also the user to make sure that he's taking care of his machine in a better way. I'm done, Peter, for the presentation.
Thank you very much, Remy, for that unique insight into what Halot are doing with regards to electrification. Thank you. We're delighted to have Jaco back with us. Jaco, my team hopefully reliably informed me that you were on slide 5 when you dropped out. So if you could pick up again from there, that would be fantastic. Over to you, Jaco. You are on mute, Jaco.
So sorry about that, Peter, and sorry for the disruption in the connection. That's not great. But I'll move forward from where I left it. So here we are. So where I left it off was basically looking at what is the industry doing, bringing the DC and the DC power and the IC power together. How easy is it for us to combine it? And the BioEnergy was a very nice way to do it. It was a very nice way to get it working, but it never materialized in a big style. It was never becoming the main wallet shareholder in fleets in terms of the new standard. So therefore, we had to work on. And we had to work on into a new era with new solutions. But the industry still has some challenges. Look on the right-hand side, Remy just talked about the Pulseo, and Nifty is predominantly in electric and hybrid and updating it constantly. Manitou with the oxygen. JLG's got a hybrid program. We have our fuel electric program. And every manufacturer who's out there at the moment is having the electrification in full swing. Battery scissors are a given that it's almost a given that it's electric drive. So in the end, you see that it will come from the indoor application that we use to it. It will get outdoors. However, we need to look at the very diverse offering of power and control systems.
Apologies, everybody. We've lost Jaco once again. Let's move on. Let's listen now to a rental perspective. We're delighted to have Philippe Witte, who's a group fleet manager from Rewal Europe, obviously one of the largest rental companies in Europe, and has got a perspective over many countries across Europe as well. Over to you, Philippe.
Yes, thank you, Peter. Let me just... So indeed, the IPEF webinar, why electrification, why old habits die hard. Thank you, Remy and Jaco, for a great presentation. I would like to give you some perspective of Rewall as a rental company active in 16 countries. But I would also like to give you some perspective on the future and from other industries. And I believe that together as an industry, we can overcome these challenges. And yes, we can use electrical machines as an alternative to diesel propulsion. And yes, we can do it profitably and with a strong bottom line. And we simply have to. The European Commission has a target to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 55% between 1990 and 2032. To do so and to reach that target, they're planning to invest 72 billion euros. And more on a local level, after 300 days, finally in the Netherlands, they managed to find an agreement of a new government. And in that 300 days, they have thought that it would be a good idea to have 3 ministries looking at fighting climate change. They've given them a budget of 35 billion euros on top of the 72 billion that the European Commission is already spending. And what is funny is that actually one of the government advisors already mentioned that it would be a difficult task to actually spend that money, spend the 35 billion euros. So that has to lead to tax grants or tax incentives. And you can see that from the car industry that they actually work. So this is the electric vehicle penetration rate per country. And you see that Norway and Netherlands, where there is a large subsidy available for electric cars, they move faster than other countries, but they are also catching up. And it's funny to see that China, for example, in 2020 was still relatively low on the electric vehicle penetration, but they're moving up to 20% in 2021. So that change is ongoing. And when preparing this talk, it is actually, I thought it's quite a good reflection of the state of electric powered equipment in the countries where we operate. We also see that in Norway and the Netherlands, there's a little bit more request and a little bit more push on electrical equipment than in some of the other countries. But it also shows that the diesel machines are still the majority. And even today, with not that many rough terrain electric machines, construction sites struggle. They struggle to provide the right infrastructure to charge the electric machines. And because that struggle, even if customers are willing to, they are hesitant to order these electrical machines. And I want to illustrate that by telling you 2 customer stories, which I had recently. So this customer was building and constructing, was a project manager and constructing an 8-story building here in the Netherlands. And this guy called the utility company asking for a connection to the grid. And they said, yes, we will supply you. Please wait 3 to 6 months, and then we have it. And by the way, because the grid is so overloaded, it should be sufficient to charge the coffee machine in the construction shack. So that is something these guys have to deal with on a daily basis. Or another customer who was cleaning windows in the city center. And he wanted to charge this, his machine, but couldn't use the charging facilities where, for example, you charge your Tesla. So also there, he had to revert back to an internal combustion engine because the machine was simply not capable. So is it all dark matter? No. So obviously you cannot have a presentation about electrification without having a picture of Elon Musk in it. But I don't want to talk about the front runner he is with electric cars, because he has a side project where he has this crazy idea to alleviate traffic. He wants to tunnel under Los Angeles and other big cities. And he, in his TEDx talk it's actually an interview of 2017, he explains very eloquently on his boring company. That's the name of his company where he wants to get these tunnels built. And he explains that he needs a factor 10 compared to the current cost of tunneling in order to make it really effective. And now I don't want to say that we need to factor 10 on improving battery capacity, but I do think we need a factor 2. So that means that the density of electricity needs to increase by a factor 2, which basically means you can run your machine twice as long. And where is that 2 coming from? Well, we currently see that, for example, in our own electric machines, which you see behind me, they can run 2 to 3 days on a single charge, right? It depends on the condition, on the job that the customer is doing. It depends on the weather, obviously, but in general, 2 to 3 days. And if you multiply that by a factor 2, you can get to the week. And at least for our rentals, at least 60 to 70% of the rental orders is actually shorter than that week. So you can get an autonomous machine working. And that will take, like Jacco and Remy also mentioned, that will take away the charging anxiety. That will take away that the customer is looking, hey, shit, where do I need to charge that machine? And it will take away, if the job is longer, that it's too crowded to charge because you have the weekend to use that time to charge your machine. So we need to go to that factor 2. And is that possible? Well, when you look at the trend of lithium-ion batteries, it actually is going in the right direction because this is the cost of a full-size battery pack per kilowatt hour. And according to Bloomberg, in 2010, that was still $1,183. But over this 10 years, it already came down 87%. And I know that 87%, or that machines in rental are not generally run on lithium ion, but on lead acid. But I hope that with the price of lithium ion coming down, that also reflects in other battery types. And actually, we're on a good track because, like with the subsidies, the investment going into battery gigafactories is enormous. McKinsey expects that by 2040, the supply of battery capacity has quadrupled compared to today's supply. And if you look around, that in Berlin, Tesla is building a new gigafactory. Northvolt has opened and produced the first batteries in Sweden. In the UK, Britishvolt announced a 2.6 billion investment in battery factory. In the Netherlands, there's a battery factory which is being built. So all these battery factories hopefully will drive supply and innovation, which will make the price of the batteries come down. So what would we get? What would be the possible solutions if we increase by factor 2? Obviously, you can make the battery pack bigger against the same cost. So then still the price difference between a diesel machine and an electrical powered machine will remain. But using subsidies, which are already available today, like the Enova in Norway or the VAMI regulation in the Netherlands, that can pay for part of that difference. On the other hand, you can also think about making the battery packs actually smaller so that they can only, that they are sufficient enough to run a day. But then have companies changing the battery pack on site so that it's not reliable, relying on the charging facility of the site. And that's already happening today. Perhaps you know these electric mopeds which you can rent in big European cities like Amsterdam, Berlin. And actually, based on the telematics data, what they do, they don't change the scooter. But they actually go there take the battery out, pop the new battery in, and on it goes. And today that will not work because of the size of the battery pack. But today there are solutions that are being developed that we have larger battery packs on site which can provide power. And I think that will be needed in the short run. But hopefully in the long run, when battery packs will decrease and the power and the energy density will increase, that might not be necessary anymore. And then also when cutting trees, you can use that. Because a tree cutter is not going to order a very big battery pack because the cost of the battery pack compared to the rental cost of his machine is not in balance. So duplicating the battery pack solves two main challenges. One, the autonomy of the machine is realized. And second, it will drive down the price difference between a diesel machine and an electric machine. But what else can be done to drive down that cost difference? Obviously, the contractor doesn't have to fuel the machine. And certainly at today's rates, fueling a machine for a single day can easily cost somewhere between 20 and 30 euros. Whereas the electricity charge may be as low as between 2.5 and 5 euros. And that doesn't even account for potential CO2 charges on exhausts. I mean, they're now trying to investigating that for industrial factories, but that might also come to the rental sector, and we need to be ready for it. And then second, I think that the initial investment can be partially earned back in lower maintenance costs and lower TCO, because you do not need to check the engine every so often. And there is less wear and tear on an electric machine because the advantage is that it immediately cuts off when it's not being used. But we all know, especially the rental companies, that operators in a diesel machine, they keep the machine running, which strains the hydraulics, strains and keeps all the moving parts in the engine going. And then finally, it will relieve stress potentially in your workshop, because less checks means less workshop. Now we all struggling to find the right mechanics today. So that are some of the advantages on a machine type level. More longer term, companies are picking up on improving the charging network. So this came out end of last year that Volvo, Daimler and Traton Group signed a joint venture agreement to implement and install a European high-performance charging network. It only consists of 1,700 charging stations, but which is not a lot in Europe, right? In the full geography. But they expect and they hope that other larger companies will join this joint venture. And also this is supported by regulators and countries. And then this could also work to improve actually the charging capabilities on the job sites. There's all elements which I think are in favor of battery or of electrification. So, and I'm rounding off, do I believe that, we just sit and wait until this 2 has been realized? No, we need to do something today. And I want to leave you with a picture of a car which is being made by a Dutch startup company called Lightyear. And what they are aiming for is a car which can drive 600 kilometers on a very small battery pack, and which is being charged by solar panels on the roof and on the bonnet. And no, I'm not crazy. I don't expect this to happen on an access platform, but I do think in the short term we need to look at other alternatives. And one of these alternatives could be HVO fuel. Also today there are still a big price difference between HVO fuel and diesel, but I believe that when the volume goes up, hopefully some of the subsidies will also make that happen to make it more affordable. That could be a very nice opportunity to bridge the gap between the 2 years, the factor 2 and the situation where we are in today. The only thing also that has its challenges, because 40 to 50% of the supply currently is coming from palm oil and rapeseed oil. And it's not very sustainable to cut down the Amazon forest to create the HVO fuel. So also that needs to be done in a sustainable way, like it has to be done in a sustainable way of charging your battery. Because if you still use the diesel generator to do that, obviously it doesn't make any sense. Or if you still use coal to do that, then it also beats the purpose. But if that is solved and we can do that sustainably, then I strongly believe that yes, as a sector, together we can overcome these electrification challenges. Yes, we then can use electrification machines as an alternative for diesel. And finally, yes, we can do that with a strong bottom line. Thanks, Peter. Back to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Philippe, for that unique insight into some of the things that Rewell Group are thinking about, and some amazing sort of testimonies from different industries there. It's interesting to see where it's going in the different industries. Thank you, Philippe. Right, we do have Jaco back once again. We're going to try one last time, and we're going to share the presentation though, Jaco, to maybe help with your internet connection. And if you can just go through it. So Chris, if you can put it up and just ask for the next slide when you're ready, Jaco. Back to you.
I will, and thank you very much. Sorry about that. Yeah, so as I mentioned, when I think when I cut off, obviously we all have our own take upon electrification and alternatively powering. There's a very diverse offering of power and control systems. There are various concepts, all with one purpose, the NOx reductions that we blow out, and obviously as a whole, the CO2 reductions. And the good thing is the battery technology, as Philippe just described, it will help to drive performance and reduce TCO. Look at the cycles that we get out of batteries today from the 2010 metric that Philippe showed. The leap in performance that we can get out of batteries is enormous, and that will really help us drive forward. A new technology will also help optimize utilization. The two-in-one machine that we also saw by Energy is back on the screen, but now in a different mode. That it will work. 8 days autonomy on a Z60 FE is not strange. Philippe already mentioned that his JLGs, which are electrified, could do 2 days without a charging cycle, and that's a super boom. So there is so much to do, but there is a big but. Next slide, please, Chris. We need to educate. We need to make sure, as a manufacturer, that our customers understand the concept and the benefits that it has. And the benefit and also the implications that it will have into sales, into service, into parts. And then next bullet, Chris, it will also be made into kind of an educational program for their customers to understand what it does and to overcome the range anxiety, because there is range anxiety. Next bullet, Chris, please. And therefore, we need to make sure rental companies understand concepts that are launched from A to Z. In every single element, not just on the negotiations table, not just on the sales team, but everywhere. Rental desk, hire desks, in the field, that's where it needs to take place. Next slide, please. Next bullet, Chris. So, and therefore, we all need to understand, and we need to prove by taking the customer by the hand, not on a piece of paper with a calculator, but just taking the customer by the hand, that working with an alternatively powered machine can make them even work longer, can make them finish their jobs quicker because they don't have the logistics of changing out machines. So therefore, we need to take them by the hand and educate them, as we used to do before, as we do with IPEV. We take people by the hand, stating that a MUPE is safer than a ladder. We just need to continue that in machine selection. Next bullet, Chris. And then we break the habits. And Chris, I suggest we skip the video for the sake of time. So the thing that we need to do is we need to keep it simple. I had a video, but I will skip that for the sake of time, for the interruption. Sorry about that. But it's very important that we keep it simple, that people can make it tangible for themselves. Philip said charging infrastructure, a big debate about it, but we see engine OEMs coming up with solutions right now with solar power generators, with a charging station, with 3 16 amps and one 32 amp charger. So is that the route forward? But who dares? Who's going to jump in that loophole that we see and is creating that niche in the market? Multifunctionality of equipment leads to new revenue models. We need to think differently, and maybe look at the also savings in efficiency and not just at the rental rate. And we need to charge because the innovation has a price. The Poseo technology is more expensive than the standard IC. Our technology is more expensive, and Nifty's hybrid is more expensive, and it has to be paid. There is no chance that a manufacturer can be the shock absorber for all the technology costs that are going into the machine. And disruptive thinking will pay off. Who dares to have his fleet fully electrified? Who dares to be the first who said no more IC on our balance sheet? The early adopters from today will benefit because we see that anywhere between 34 and 85 feet, that is electrifiable at the moment with volume production. Anything above that is still a challenge, but it will come. So if we can manage it on the volume, then taking on the next step into the bigger, less volume categories, but more impactful in terms of diesel emissions, that will definitely be paying off for everybody who dares to take the leap of faith. Change is hard, it's scary, and it's not easy, but there is no choice because we now have a choice to make the steps. There will be a time that the steps will be forced upon us. So now we can choose our own direction before it gets directed for us. And safety will always come first. We cannot sacrifice that. But the future will really teach us quite quickly that ecology, economy, and efficiency will go together. And the success of that will not come by chance, it will come by change. And that was it, Piet, in 3 steps.
Thank you, Jacco. We got there in the end. No, thank you to all three of my speakers. We do have a few questions, if you don't mind. The first one I'm going to ask is really for the manufacturers. Which models are growing fastest in terms of the move from traditional diesel to electric? Remy.
Yeah, clearly, sorry, I'm probably not going to go deep in your question because clearly we have demand everywhere. Clearly, we have demand everywhere. Especially, I'll talk about rough terrain machine. Definitely, it's always a bit harder to electrify a big boom today in terms of technology. Also, clearly for the cost. We talk about lithium-ion battery, but we show that clearly that Philippe showed that very good performance on the pricing, and it's a reality because again, if looking to B2C environments, it's not the case. So clearly here in Olot, we see big demand on all the segments, rough terrain machine up to 30 million today.
Thank you very much. Jacco, same question.
Yeah, no, I think I can piggyback on what Remy is saying. The higher volume articulating booms are the most present and most available. But we see that there is a shift now also coming towards telescopic booms and the demand for super booms because they are very long on site and they still have the large engines. The super boom at least has 74 horsepower. It is stage 5, so it is clean, but it's not to the stage that an electric machine will be. And that is the next phase for electrifying as well. I think we're all looking at that on how to get it done because pulling forward 24 tons of steel on an e-drive motor, you need to have quite a big battery pack. So you might see that counterweights will completely disappear and it will be a complete battery cell or something like that. But it's also a matter of cost and obviously the availability and the rental rates that can be applied for such equipment.
Thank you. One for you, Philippe, if I may. You know, you showed us the adoption rates from electric cars and the percentages for the different countries across Europe. You obviously operate across many countries in Europe. Where do you see I think you did mention this, but can you just reiterate where you see the biggest moves in terms of moving from the diesel powered machines to electric within the Rewald Group?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously in Europe, the change is faster than in the Middle East, where we are also active. And then if you look at Europe, you mainly see the requests coming from Norway, Netherlands, Denmark, Sweden as a front runners. But I have to say that all the other countries are catching up quickly.
Brilliant, thank you. And back to the manufacturers again. We talk about the upfront cost of the new sort of range of electric machines being much more expensive, whether it be the lithium technology or other things that go into making these new models. Over a 10-year life cycle, what is cheapest today, diesel or your new versions of electric machines? Remy? You're on mute, Remy.
Yeah, you mean you're talking about the total cost of the machine compared to diesel, for example?
Yeah, whole life costs of electric versus diesel today.
Yeah, today, as said, already 70% of the machine we are building today, they are electric. So I'm not saying it's easy to transfer a rough terrain machine because the power is more, but basically there is a big advantage in our business that the engagement rate of the machine is not big. If you look to the parameter of the machine, it's not big. So the power, the total absorbed power of the machine is not big. So it's not, I'm not saying it's easy, but we don't need today all the time very big batteries and very specific architecture. I want to demystify that technologically speaking. So that means, looking back to your question, today the target when we develop a product, a Pulseo machine, is to have a better TCO than the diesel machine. Clearly, that's the target. And we think with thanks to the cost of the components in 10, 15 years, there won't be any more question around that.
Fantastic, thank you. Same question to you, Jaco.
Well, obviously one of the drivers, as Remy said, the componentry, because it will be wider available, and as Philip showed, battery pricing is coming down. What's a very important factor, obviously, is also residual values. And with electric or hybrid machines, when they came out, the anticipations that we made in terms around residual values were limiting itself around Europe, because the emission regulations are more fierce in continental Europe than in other parts like Middle East and Asia. Good thing, China is moving to stage 4, so there is a focus in also the countries which were traditionally very attractive for second life machines. They are getting into the momentum of environmental friendly machines as well. So therefore you see that TCO will benefit of an EV or an electric machine. It will definitely benefit from that it's opening up, and therefore we see over time that the TCO will definitely be much better for the newly powered machines. And as Philippe rightly stated, there is less wear and tear. The smaller the engine, the smaller it is. Obviously, we still need to do our safety checks. We need to do our scheduled maintenance and drive systems, etc. But it will definitely come down, and therefore it will be a game changer in terms of TCO as well.
Thanks, Jaco. One for specifically being asked of Remy, but I suppose Philippe, well, all three of you can have a view on this. Can you give your opinion on how far behind in terms of time the Middle East is versus Europe regarding the uptake of electrification? Remy?
Yeah, it's a good question. Here clearly, the change cannot be everywhere. That's our purpose today. Clearly, we see that some zones are well in advance compared to Middle East, clearly, definitely. Also, if we talk about North America, and also if we compare to North of Europe, it's not the same behavior. We saw very good signal in North of Europe, and Philippe go through that a bit. So China also, it's emerging a lot very recently. So today, Middle East is yes, it's far behind. We don't know exactly when it will boom, but shift must be done. But the shift cannot be done everywhere at the same time, for sure. It must be only progressive.
Yeah, thank you. Same question, Philippe. You've obviously got a business in the Middle East as well as the rest of your European operations.
Yeah, I have to follow Remy there a little bit. Not everywhere it can be done at the same time. I think, you know, the conditions in the Middle East have sort of impact batteries more than anywhere else with the high temperatures. And there it should come, I think, from contractors, European contractors building in the Middle East, who, based on their experiences here in Europe, drive that change there. Because in the end, you need also the end customer to really be engaged with this. Otherwise, it will not work. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Time for one last question. It's one for me, for all of you. I suppose it's not an easy one. Do you see a time where all machines on construction sites will be battery powered? Philippe?
I don't think so, because not every machine. I mean, the heavier the machine, then probably you need to look at different alternatives, like hydrogen, for example. Although you also need the network to maintain that and make it available to the construction site. I definitely see a very large part of the machines being battery powered, but not. I wouldn't expect that in anywhere near 5 years. I expect it to be towards 2030.
Okay,
brilliant. Thank you. Remy, same question.
I would follow definitely Philippe, and what we see today is the pure electrification, hybrid or full electric machine working with battery. Anyway, the type of battery it is, it's probably not the final step. There will be most probably evolution. We talk about hydrogen, clearly. It's still a big step, but definitely, let's say with low emission machine, if we put the question a bit more general, let's say 2030, the shift will be there. That's what we feel today.
Thank you, Remy. Jaco.
Yeah, no, I can only add to what the first two responses were, that with the regional requirements being so different, internal combustion will never ever disappear. And therefore you also see that manufacturers are also prototyping all kind of different fuels coming out of laboratories right now that help to drive down CO2, because there are areas which climatologically are not fit for purpose in terms of battery power. So there needs to be alternative for that. And talking about the Middle East, ironically, we delivered the first 20-meter articulating electric booms to Dubai when we launched the process. So for us, it was like, okay, it's taken off. So they're setting the stage. But it's we really feel that education there is key. And also, it depends a little bit if the customers that we operate with also are part of a larger organization that have a base in mainland Europe, because there you see that they can enable the drive and enable the change. So completely disappearing will not happen for the IC engines, but the push for alternatives will bring a balance into a different way in terms of electrified machines.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jaco. Massive thank you to all three of my speakers, Jaco de Kleiver, Philippe Witte, and Remy Heidelberger. Thank you, guys. I'd also like to say a huge final thank you to our 4 sponsors for this webinar. They are Versalift, EMA Group, Skyjack, and Hinowa. Our next webinar is on the 27th of April. And it's IPAF's Rental Plus for Contractors. That's the title. Registrations will be open soon. And just finally, before I'll let you leave, I just want to remind you about the IPAF Summit and the APA Awards evening that's coming up on the 10th of March in London. Registrations are ongoing. Our shortlists for award winners have been submitted this week and publicised this week. So good luck if you're on the shortlist of the IAPAs. The final date for the early bird registration is the 21st of this month. So if you're watching a recording of this, you may have missed it, but it's Friday for those of you watching live. So please get registered and take advantage of the early bird discount. Thank you very much from me, and I hope to see you soon. Cheers.